And if you don't get what we're doing today, I definitely recommend you going through and rewatching this stuff. The stuff we're doing today is foundational. If you don't understand it in a week from now or 2 weeks from now or 3 weeks from now, you're going to start falling apart, okay? So the first thing we're doing is going to the Start menu and we're going to Documents. Okay, we're going to create your folder structure. Real quick, some basic things of how to create a folder. If you look at the top here, it says New Folder. That's all you have to know about creating a new folder, okay? So you're going to create a new folder, and you're going to label it with your name. Okay? Now the reason we want to label it with our name is that we know whose it is. You don't want to label anything ever on any computer around here with anything but your name. Every single file you create, every single thing you touch should have your name in it. That way if you lose it, all you have to do is go up to Search and find your files, okay? So inside your folder, and if I go too fast, let me know, okay? We can slow down. So we're gonna go into our folder and make a new folder called W14. And W14 just stands for Winter 14. And we're gonna go into that folder. And we're gonna create another new folder, 2 new folders actually. Oops. One folder is going to be called Work, and the other folder is going to be called Source. Okay. If I had you in more than one class, I would actually have you go through and create a folder before that that's just 2510, but because I have all of you in one class, I'm just making it W14 Work and Source. Okay. So what these 2 folders are going to do. The work folder is for everything that we don't want to lose, okay? So if we have a file that we've worked on, we spent 6 hours on, 12 hours on, whatever, we don't want to lose that file. If we have something that we don't really care about losing, like if I record a lecture and I give it to you and you lose it, big deal, you can always re-get that lecture, okay? Anything you don't care about goes in Source. Anything you do care about goes in Work, okay? For some reason, if you can only back up one folder, you back up the Work folder. All right? The Source folder we don't care too much about. It's always good too to have this kind of separation to branch off, so you have like, okay, here's my organized stuff that I need for this specific assignment, and here's stuff that I'm just using as a collection or repository to get all my data. All right? So one of our assignments that we're going to do, you don't need to do this part, is going to be a desk. So a common thing that as you're working on stuff is to go through and look up pictures. So I'm looking up pictures of desks. Maybe I am. There it goes. Okay, so I can look at this and see different pictures of desks. Okay, obviously there's 100 different kinds of desks that are available. In this class, we're sticking to a very specific design for a desk. But if I wasn't sure of what kind of desk I wanted to create, I'd want to go through and look at this kind of stuff and say, okay, what kind of desk do I want to create? Here looks like a good one. I'm going to take this picture and I'm going to save it as a reference image. Okay, that way I have plenty of stuff that I can use as a way to look at it and say, okay, what does it look like? Where are the shelves at? Where are the trays at? Where is everything? Okay. Sometimes we'll even go into even further detail. Let me go into the search options. Size, large. And I may want to grab an image, let's say like this, so that I can really look at this and see, okay, which way is the grain facing on this wood? That's an important thing. When you model something and you put like a wood texture on it and your grain is going the opposite way, someone may not be able to tell what's wrong with your picture, but there's definitely something wrong with it, okay? So some things are just subtle like that, where we have to understand the direction that the grain of the wood is facing. Sometimes even just these little rounded corners are something that we need to add in there. And sometimes you just don't see it, or you just don't think about it without actually looking at a picture of it and then saying, okay, I see what mine is missing. I need to include that so that it looks better. Also for texture reference, this one doesn't have a very good texture reference, but sometimes for texture reference, it's important to kind of understand what these things are doing. Okay. Now, as a 3D person, typically, if you're doing something, you may even have your own camera that you say, I want to create this lamp. So I take a couple pictures of the lamp from different directions. Maybe I get one that's perfectly dead on, head on, so I can get the exact shape of it. When they're doing stuff for Avengers and they have like Mark Ruffalo and they need to get him as a CG character, they take hundreds of pictures and they put those in the computer to use as reference for creating him. Every single pit and mark and everything else that's on his face and arms and anything else that's going to be CG, they have to put in there. So they have to get lots of reference, okay? So Google Images is great for getting this kind of reference so that we can understand what these things look like. So if I grab anything from Google Images, I'm putting it inside my source, okay? Because if I lose this, I can always get that stuff back. But the stuff in my work folder, I can never get back, all right? That's the stuff that I physically created that in the world exists nowhere else but my work folder, okay? So anything you don't want to lose, put in the work folder. Anything you don't care about losing, put in the source folder. All right, that's the story for that. All right, so now we're going to go back to the D drive. So if you need to, you can close that window, or you can just find the D drive over here on the left and go to the D drive. Everyone's good so far? All right. On the left?
Save drive.
Yeah, save D colon. If you're used to a Mac, it might be just a little bit, a couple days of just getting used to how PCs work. Instead of like on a Mac, they would just have Macintosh or save in the room across the hall. But on a PC, they actually have letters. So they would have a C, a D. In this case, this other drive is called an E. Some of you might have an F drive, whatever. So D drive is where we save everything to. So in the D drive, there's a Maya folder. You're going to open up the Maya folder. And then in here, in mine, you'll see that I have a whole lot of folders that are labeled 2013, 2014. Usually they have an X64 somewhere in the name there. You may or may not have a 2013, 2014, whatever folder. We care about the 2014 folder. If you don't have it, you get to skip this next step. If you do have it, you want to delete it, okay? So I'm going to delete the folder. I'm actually going to move it into a different folder. All right, so you're just going to delete your 2014 folder so that it no longer exists in that folder. You can right-click and go to delete, not backspace, but delete. Or you can just hit the delete button. Okay. Now what we just deleted were the Maya preferences. Okay. If you've used Photoshop or Illustrator, there's a hotkey command you can do when you open it. For Maya, they're just right out there. All right. The best thing about Maya is the interface once you're used to it. Okay. It's also very cool that it keeps its preferences there. So at any point you say, you know what, I want to keep the same look that I have at school at home. You can just take that 2014 folder, bring it to your home computer, and there you go. Everything works exactly the way it should. Okay. Also, from this class, we're going to set up our preferences. The class after us is going to set up different preferences. The class after that will set up different preferences. Okay. So that way, when we leave for the day, we can back up our preferences. When we come in the morning, we can put them back in, or afternoon. All right. That way, we're working the exact same interface. If you've used Photoshop before and you're like, why isn't this tool working the way it should? Because someone else changed something and you had to delete stuff. All right. So we can close the D drive. We can close our desk folder if we have it open. And then we're going to open up Maya 2014. There should be an icon on your desktop that says 2014 Maya. If not, you can just go to the Start menu and search for Maya 2014. Okay. And then you just click on it and it opens. You may get a message that says, do you want to copy your old preferences or do you want to create new ones, default ones? We want to create default ones. Okay. The reason it's asking some and not others is because if you have 2013 on the computer and had a 2013 preference, it could copy those. All right. So if Maya 2015 comes out and we have our preferences the exact way we want, it'll automatically transfer those if we want to. It's still loading. There we go. Hit create default preferences if you don't have that. These windows you should be pretty much used to if you've ever installed anything on your computer. Basically, the customer involvement one is just like take a survey or let Autodesk monitor your hardware and software stuff. You can ignore that. This one that's popping up is highlighting new settings. In Maya 2014, they have several new things available. So this is just highlighting those kinds of things. I'm going to click show this at startup off because I don't want to show that at the startup, and then just close that window. And then this other one that's popping up is the 1-minute startup movies. You may want to keep these available at least for the first couple weeks. But these are how do you create and view objects? How do you zoom, pan, and roll? How do you move and scale? So these are just like quick movies that Autodesk has that allow you just to kind of say, you know what, I forgot from last class how to move something, or I forgot how to spin around inside my view. So I'm turning it off. You may want to keep it on. Okay, you can always get it back if you need to. So I'm going to leave that as your option, what you want to do, but I'm just going to close it for now. Okay, so this is the Maya interface. Okay, you'll notice that the hotkey list is empty. Okay, that's not because there are no hotkeys. That's because I want you to fill them in. All right, as we're going. So the first thing that we're going to do is just kind of tour the interface a little bit, and then we'll get into what these things are doing. Like I said, Maya has one of the best interfaces that I've ever used, and I've used lots of programs. This stuff up here, it looks very intimidating. There's a lot of stuff going on, and there is, okay? The top thing here is just like you've used before. This is your menu bar. All right. So up top here, this is all of our menu items, okay? And you've seen these before in Photoshop, Illustrator, any other program you've ever used has had these menu items up here. Obviously, for this program, they're specific to Maya. One of the differences, though, is that we have this little drop down right here. And right now, this is it says polygons, okay? So if you pay attention to this guy that says mesh, as I change this from polygons to animation, it no longer says mesh. Now it says something else over here. These menus up top actually change depending on what you're doing. These things behind the screen that I erased that went through and did the modeling, did the lighting, the rendering, the texturing, and the animation stuff, each of those have their own menu. And some of them have more than one menu. And as I change these, I can get different menu sets is what those are called. Okay, and depending on what kind of operation I'm doing inside Maya, I want to be in a different menu set. All right, so if I'm doing modeling, there's two modeling menus. There's a polygon modeling menu, and there's a surfaces modeling menu. If I'm doing animation, I want to be in the animation menu. Okay, so that's what's up here. This next thing is, it's called a status line. It's not called a status line. It's called something else. Maybe it's called a status line. It is. There we go. I was right. Sometimes I forget things that are very, very not discussed much. So this is the status line. It's a bunch of stuff. We'll get into what each thing means. I'm not going to go through every single thing today. But I want you just to see the expanded abilities that Maya has. Okay? All of this stuff can be customized. I can move around any one of these elements here. This is one of the best things that's in Maya, is that if I go to any menu item, I can just pull that menu off and keep it on the side. So that I can create basically like a little hotbox area of different things that I'm using. So instead of like one of the biggest gripes I have in Photoshop is that I go to Effects, Filter, Gaussian Blur. And then I say, okay, well now I want to Gaussian Blur something else. Then I have to go back up to Effects, back up to Filters, back up to Gaussian Blur. In Maya, I can just make my own menu that has all that stuff. Or I can pull it off to the side and just click on something and say Gaussian Blur, or click on it and do whatever. Okay? So it's very cool that you can do that kind of stuff. Also, these menu sets that are up here, I can customize by making my own. See, it says customize right there. I can make my own menu set. All right. This thing right here, this is called the shelf. And it's very helpful, but it's also kind of like people use it as a crutch for things. Okay, we're going to use it in a very specific way. All right. So on your shelf, I want you to click on the tab that says Custom. Okay. This is an empty shelf. This is where we are able to create our own buttons. Okay. So if we use the Gaussian Blur every single day 500 times, we don't want to have to keep going up to Effects, Blur, Gaussian Blur. We can just create a button on our shelf that is Gaussian Blur. Okay. There's no Gaussian Blur in Maya, but we're going to create some other stuff, right? So the hotkey for creating a shelf, and it's somewhere on your list, create shelf item, is Control and Shift. Okay, so you find the one on your list, and if I open up my list, I can tell you exactly where it is. And that little blip was me taking over the screens. Not taking over, but at least accessing. Okay, so we're going to hold down the Control and Shift. So click in the Maya interface, just click like in the viewport, and then hold down Control Shift. And then we're going to go under the Edit menu. So go under Edit, go to Delete by Type, and then go to History and just let go of the mouse, then let go of the keyboard. And then click back in your interface view. Okay, Control Shift, go to it and do it. It's going to take, so we're going to hold down Control Shift again, and we're going to go to Modify, Center Pivot. And then you can just click off. Okay, we'll get into what these actually mean as we're working, but these are ones that you will use 100 times a day. Okay, that's why we're putting them there, because these are things we don't want to have to keep going to Edit, Delete by Type, History, and then Modify, Center Pivot. Okay, I'm pretty lazy, so anything I can do to kind of speed things up, I want to do. So Control Shift again, Window Outliner, and then Control Shift again, Window Attribute Editor. Okay, so let me go through, and don't do this to yours, but I'm just going to delete them just so you can see adding them again. Okay, so Control Shift, Edit, Delete by Type History, Modify Center Pivot, Window Outliner, Attribute Editor, Hypershade, Graph Editor. Okay, so I went pretty quick that second time, and eventually you will get to be that quick. Okay, you will get to be at the point where you don't have to think about, you know, this. You just kind of go in there and you just do it. Okay. So this is the shelf, and what's cool about this is, like I said, we created buttons. So all we have to do is click on those, and then we get stuff to happen without having to go through all these different menus. And when you're animating stuff, it's a huge help being able to just click something and have it pop open instead of us having to go and find it under whatever menu it's at. Okay. And the same thing with the Hypershade here, even though it's kind of going slower. It'll go quicker the second time. Not much. There you go. Okay, so that's the shelf. Now we can customize this further if we want. I'm just going to show you, just kind of like, you know, a little bit further down the rabbit hole, is that I can actually go into the shelf editor, and here are all those things that I just added. So here's Delete History, here's Center Pivot, Outliner, Attribute Editor, Hypershade, and Graph Editor. You'll see that some of these have pictures. I can actually customize the picture for it. So I can actually go through, create my own picture, and drop it in there. Or I can pick from a list of ones that Autodesk has provided over here. You can see those different icons right there. So I could say, that's what I want for that picture, then select it, and then use that. But I don't want to do that. I could also go here. This is another thing that makes Maya different than a lot of programs. This is what's actually happening. When I click that button, when I click Graph Editor, it's actually running a command. It's opening up a script called Graph Editor. Okay? So one of the cool things is that I could have several things kind of listed here. So let's pretend that every time I create a sphere, I shrink it down to half size, and then I move it 2 units up. Okay? I can make a little macro or a little script that every time I want to, I click this button, and it'll create a sphere, scale it down to this size, and move it over. Okay? You can't do that kind of stuff in Photoshop. You kind of can with like actions, but not to the same level that you can inside of here. Okay? So just so you're aware of some of that kind of stuff. They also have you look at the top of this menu. It says Mel or Python. Maya has 2 programming languages that are using this. One is called Mel, which is the Maya embedded language. You don't need to know that. And the other one is Python. Python is a high-end language. I recommend if at any point you kind of are getting, a little bit further in your career, a little bit further in your education, that you take a programming class. And Python is a great programming class because it's pretty much, it's not English, but it's as close as we can get in a programming language. Okay, so that's our shelf. This guy on the left is our tools. So you see over here we have these things here. We'll get to what those are going to be doing. On the bottom we have a timeline. Now it's kind of like an After Effects timeline, but it's just advancing our time. That's all it's doing. It's not like we can stack things like you could in After Effects. It's just one timeline. That's all you get. The bottom stuff we'll get to. This red area, or this black area right here on the right, this one right down here, this is going to be an important one because that'll give you error messages. Okay, so right here it'll say if you did something bad, it'll say you're doing something bad, or we can't do this, or this is why it's not working, or whatever. All right, so we'll pay attention to this. If it turns red, that means something bad just happened. We need to figure it out. And then below that, on this very bottom, it says display the short help tips for tools and selections. That's our help line. So as we're inside of a tool, it'll say you need to do this and this in order for this tool to work. All right. So just to give you an example, if I created something, oops. Thank you. And then I went to, I don't want that. I want this. There we go. So I'm in this interactive split tool. So it says on here, on the very bottom, it says use the left mouse button or middle mouse button to tumble, shift to constrain rotation. I don't know why it says that. It shouldn't say that because I'm not in the tumbling tool. Let me switch to a different tool. That's usually where it says stuff. Surfaces. Intersect. Trim tool. There we go. So I'm in this tool and it says click button 1 on the surface to select a region to keep. Okay. So that way I know what it is it's asking me to do with this specific tool. So I can say, yep, I want to do that. And now what I've done is I've cut this thing off. There we go. I've broken that into a little piece.